Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coping with Donald. It is February 11th, and I am Phil. All right, Howard Lutnick. I thought I would never ever see him without his big shit-eating grin plastered on his face, but I did, and it was yesterday during that congressional hearing when he was testifying and had to keep talking about, well, yeah, after I knew Jeffrey Epstein was disgusting in 2005, and I said I'd never be in the same room with him again. And after he was convicted of minor, no, with minors, uh, behavior that assault, and he was judged a sex offender in 2009. I still met with him a bunch of times and started a business with him. Even though I said that I would never be in the same room with him in 2005 with my wife. And by the way, she was with me too when we saw him after 2009. Boy, was he sweating. He was sweating so much, I actually took a break from watching reruns of the Kid Rock show halftime performance over and over and over to do this. Howard Lutnick. And by the way, he's the Commerce Secretary, and we are having all the other countries we used to do a lot of trade with start to make agreements amongst themselves and China. So I would say at this point he's a pretty lousy Commerce Secretary. And he wouldn't be missed if he resigned. Jamie Raskin has said that it's probable that Trump is mentioned in the unredacted files over 1 million times in the Epstein files. 1 million times. And you know what that would mean? That would mean for every 100,000 times that Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files, there is one transsexual playing in women's sports somewhere. But let's talk about that all the time. Ghislaine Maxwell now says that she'll tell the truth if she gets pardoned by President Trump. Now, everybody knows that that truth will be that Trump had nothing to do with anything, that Trump is a saint. I think the most wonderful punishment for Ghislaine Maxwell would be to have to share a cell with Trump. You know, those cells with like one set of bunk beds so two people can sleep there, and one very exposed open toilet. Let Trump use that toilet for a few days or a week, and you'll see Ghislaine sing about the truth. In New Jersey, a man named Tom Malinowski used to be a representative to Congress, a Democrat, and I guess they're having a special election. Oh yeah, they are, because the woman who is now governor of New Jersey used to be this congressperson, and so they had to fill the seat. I've always felt really weird about that. Why are you going to have a special election, say April or May, to fill a seat that you're going to have a regular election for in November. So I never really understood that, got to be honest. But Tom Malinowski was supposed to win. He had AIPAC money behind him, meaning he's friendly to Israel. And there was another woman running against him who apparently would be a third person in this election I'm going to talk about. Because there's two people that are important. That's Tom Malinowski and Anna Lelia. Anna Lelia. Wow. Amamalia? Mejia is her last name. And the third person started to get even more AIPAC money than Tom Malinowski. Because this third person, whose name I didn't bother to write down, what great reporting, huh? She apparently was more friendly to Israel than Tom Malinowski, so they started pumping money to her, hoping she would get the nomination. Now, I want to remind everybody, this is a pretty wealthy district. It has places like Morristown, New Jersey, the suburbs of the suburbs. Your suburbs are, this is west of the suburbs of New York City in New Jersey, if that makes any sense. But this is a pretty wealthy area. And this third woman siphoned off enough votes from Tom Malinowski. I think she wound up with about 10,000 votes. That Mejia won the primary by 500 votes over Tom Malinowski. AIPAC unwittingly allowed that to happen. Anna Mejia, I'm just going to call her Ms. Mejia from here on, was endorsed by AOC and Bernie Sanders and is not a fan of Israel. So AIPAC just shot itself in the foot. Now, taking it one step further, I posed the question, which we'll find out the answer to in the coming month or two. Does that make this seat susceptible to a Republican win? Remember, it's a pretty wealthy district. And Ms. Mejia is like a Bernie Sanders AOC, but this isn't a Bernie Sanders AOC kind of area. So let's see how she does in the election against the Republican. This could be a flip of a seat. It was Mickey Sherrill, that's her name, the governor. It was her seat. So it was a Democratic seat, and if this person is too left, it could actually flip it to Republican. We'll see what happens there. Finally, the jobs report of today. 150 or $130,000 130,000 new jobs, which who believes that? But anyway, let's take it for what it is. Last year, supposedly, there was a little bit over 500,000 jobs created in the U.S., far below what most people would say is to maintain enough jobs for the people. Because that number needs to be something like, in the old days, they used to say 150 or 160,000 a month, just to keep up with people looking for jobs and people coming into the country, which we don't have many of right now. But the jobs report for all of 2025 was reduced from 500,000 new jobs for the year to 181,000 new jobs for the year, which is way not enough. Now, the far right people are coming out saying, well, we deported so many immigrants that there's nobody to fill whatever farm jobs there are. So, that's why the numbers are so low. But just think for a moment. Aren't we only supposed to deport the criminals among them? Yeah, I know. The rapists and the schmurderers and maybe people who break into other people's homes, robbers. Can we say robbers, or do we have to call them like drobbers on YouTube? So you're telling me that all the people that you're deporting were working farm jobs and hospitality jobs in the daytime and then committing their crimes at night, because that's your logic. Well, all the people we're deporting, that's why there's less jobs. Besides, um, would that really affect how many jobs are open? Yes, it would. There's a lot of open jobs. Now, do they count into the jobs numbers? The jobs available, nobody's doing it, okay? Because you've deported so many immigrants. Maybe you have deported people who aren't criminals? Have you ever thought about that? Because I'm thinking about it. If the administration says, well, we deported so many people, but they were only supposed to deport criminals, you wouldn't have this kind of effect on numbers. Because only in the far right circles, that's the only place that you'll find people saying all of these immigrants are criminals. I think most people at this point would dispute that. So, after an initial surge in the stock market, it came back in to about even. Because I think they're looking at these numbers a little more closely and what they and their significance to everything that's going on. If Donald Trump really wants interest rates lowered, he won't put out phony job reports that have good numbers. But then Donald Trump isn't. The man does not play 3D chess. I don't care what anyone says. He can't connect. He cannot connect. The old saying is, for every action, there's a reaction. For every action, there is a reaction. If you put out a good jobs number, it's going to be less convincing for the Fed to lower interest rates. But I'm sure he doesn't understand that. He just says, I'm the king and I want noodles and whatever. Oh, speaking of the bridge going from Michigan to Canada, or Canada to Michigan. Canada paid for the whole bridge. Trump wrote them a letter saying, you've been so unfair to us. We want half of that bridge. And we want the money generated from it, etc., etc. Otherwise, you are going to be taken over by China. Basically, you're cozying up to China. They're going to take you over and forbid you to play hockey anymore and take away the Stanley Cup. That's the person that was elected to the presidency of the United States of America. A man who will do anything and say anything, trying to get people's minds off the fact that he's in the Epstein files 1,000,000 times. This has been Coping with Donald. I'm Phil. Have a good day.